It's okay for the other presenters not to know how to use Prezi, but I kind of feel as director of the e-learning unit, I probably should know how to use Prezi. In confession, this is the first time I've done it. Bob's dragged me away from PowerPoint, out of my comfort zone. Yeah, so that's me. I'm glad Bob's introduced me because I have such a long title, I have to take 2 breaths to get through it. But sometimes I think I'm controversial by accident. When I was thinking about kind of being here at the opening of the symposium, I guess I thought I'd say a few things that would hopefully be thought-provoking and a little bit controversial to send you away. I think thinking about what has happened in virtual learning environments and what might happen in the future. So if you're looking there and you're reading a conservative and not pedagogically useful view of the VLE, I guess you could think 2 things. One is, should an associate professor at the University of Hong Kong be quoting from Wikipedia? I ask that seriously. If we think about how, well, okay, it wasn't that serious, but now it is. If you think about how knowledge is generated these days, where it comes from, how it's consumed, what is authoritative, places like Wikipedia call into question traditional sources of information. Okay? So we can think now, what are the different ways in which our students can go about gathering, finding knowledge, and what are the authoritative sources there. But the reason this is really up there is, whilst it's not a pedagogically useful view of the VLE, virtual learning environment, or in Hong Kong, I guess Australia and New Zealand, we would call it a learning management system. The reason it's there is, I would say to you, it accurately reflects what has happened in institutes of higher education around the world in terms of the use of these environments. And what I mean is that they have been used traditionally to replicate what goes on in the traditional teaching situation. If this were a research symposium, or if I were going to justify this with research, I could. There's plenty out there, particularly a 2004 report by Zemsky and Massey called the Weather Station Project, which looked at a number of top kind of institutions in the States of what happened to e-learning and why did it fail. The reason they said it failed is because pedagogy didn't change. What actually did happen is we took what we were doing and we used the VLE or the LMS to replicate what was going on in face-to-face situations. My job here is really to operationalise the University of Hong Kong's e-learning strategy, and a big part of that strategy revolves around Moodle. So what is part of my job? To make sure that this does not happen, that we don't end up in a situation of replicating the same kind of pedagogies using VLEs or LMSs simply as file repositories. See, I got it right the first time, apparently I can't multitask. Okay, so we've covered what's the predominant use. What I would suggest to you is predominantly the use of the VLE. If you talk to anybody in my position off the record about what it is that's predominantly going on within their institutions, I think they'd say to you, we're seeing mostly file uploads, we're seeing a bit of discussion forum activity going on. Did it have to be this way? No, absolutely not. Virtual learning environments have a whole range of functionality and affordances that if we thought about our teaching and learning correctly, we could have used them in much richer ways in terms of deepening the student learning experience and helping our students to achieve their learning outcomes. I come from a technical background, so I started off like building websites and doing graphic design and that kind of stuff. So I know what VLEs are capable of. I've worked my way through most of them. They can be incredibly rich in terms of delivering a learning experience to students. What happens is that I think the tendency is to use the absolute minimal functionality. If you think about a virtual learning environment like Moodle, you can create a web page. Okay? That web page can contain any kind of media, it can be structured in any way that you want. You can embed resources from any other location, and you can put good pedagogy behind it. So the notion that somehow technology has failed us, I would suggest, is essentially wrong. Some of you who think one step further about where I would go with that would probably suggest where the failure has lay in terms of use of the VLEs. We have a short time, and all I'm going to say is what are the pedagogies with which we've been working for a long time? Well, they're the same as they were 20 or 30 years ago before we started really making extensive use of technologies in teaching and learning. You're looking at behaviourism, cognitivism, and constructivism. Okay? They're the essential pedagogies which are still being used, and actually the ones that we tend to instantiate most in learning environments, VLEs, is a sort of behaviourist approach. Okay? I'm sure some of you are thinking very deeply by now. I'm not going to be around at tea break. I'm going somewhere else. I'll hide with Bob somewhere. What I mean by that is if we put up static content and then we put up multiple choice questions, it's drill and practice. Okay? If you look, I recently did a review of all of the iPad applications, and we're still seeing the same thing, like what's happening around mobile learning, static content. Even at Apple, you go to the Apple website and you look at them talking about how useful the iPad is for teaching and learning, and they'll say, oh, we can deliver content and students can do multiple choice quizzes at the end. Well, fantastic, well done, Apple. Okay. I think it's time that we rethink. Oh, I still keep on the press. Bob, thank you so much. So, what I'm going to say, traditional mantra, and I've lived by this for a lot of years, learning-led and technology-enabled. We should start with pedagogy. We should start to think about what it is that we're doing with our students. We should think about how we can work with libraries and integrate teaching and learning approaches with our physical environments. We should think about problem-based learning, case-based learning, active learning, authentic learning. We are awash with theories that we might apply in terms of our teaching approaches. What I did was flip this round, right? I'm going to say to you honestly, I'm not convinced by it. And for me, it's more a springboard to thought. What would happen if we flipped it around and said we're technology-led and learning-enabled? Right, I'm not going to do that really, but you know, it's the opening of the panel. But what I'm trying to get at there, I think, is what would happen if we stopped thinking of technologies as a bolt-on? Okay? I have my course and I'm going to bolt on something from the learning management system to aid my students' learning. Well, I think we'd end up with something very, very different. I'm going to get it right this time. Fantastic. I suspect some of you are now utterly unconvinced that I'm Director of a Learning Technology Unit. George Siemens is sitting on over there, so I wasn't expecting him to be here. I have to come clean and say that connectivism is also a springboard thought for me, but it intrigues me in terms of, and please ask George all the difficult questions about connectivism. It intrigues me in terms of what would happen if we worked off this approach, and I do not understand it totally or fully. What it is for me is a way to think about what would we do if we understood our students as being potentially always and at all times connected to multiple sources of information through a whole range of technologies. Right? That was our starting point, probably in conjunction with pedagogies. So rather than thinking from a design perspective, we have teaching and learning, what would the LMS do? What would happen if we went right back and built a course from the ground up saying, I'm going to say connectivism is maybe social construct, so it's the idea of social construct and reference to technology, something like that, that we could fundamentally rethink how it is we're pitching these courses and the way in which our students might go about their learning and the way in which we go about our teaching. So I've gone through the first point. Physical spaces and virtual spaces utilised and leveraged to engage students in research-based learning, complex problems, cases. Yeah, the VLE and LMS, I have no problem with them. And actually, all the metrics at our university in terms of the success of the strategy at the moment rest on Moodle usage. I have no problem with it. The LMS can be used very, very well. What I'd like us to think about is what are the whole range of other technologies that we might employ at the same time and in addition to VLE or LMS. There you go, tablets, laptops, learning spaces, presentation spaces, wired and wireless connectivity. I'm excited about this new library space because I see what it could mean in terms of a teaching and learning approach and our students coming here and utilising a technology-rich space in order to complete work that they were then going to take back and do something completely different rather than sitting in the traditional lecture and tutorial format. I like this. Who are these people? I went to this stock photography site and I found this picture of all these people sitting there with their pens and papers. And I presume it's a reasonably recent photo. I don't know where they took it. So next to it, who are these people? What are all those little icons? They're representative of a kind of range of social media, other services, applications that are available to us today. So that's what the picture is meant to convey. Let's get it right again, Ian. There we go. So to go back from VLE LMS as this kind of self-contained system, virtual in contrast to physical, what do we mean? It's the essence of what's going on or the effect of what's going on. corresponds to the essence or the effect in physical reality. So what I mean by that, for example, is we can have conversations in the real world, we can have conversations in the virtual world, we can gather information in the real world, we can gather information in this virtual space. I think we can start to think of this holistically, and that's probably what I'm getting at. As I said, I'm not utterly convinced by my argument, but I do like it as a springboard code. What would a holistic picture look like now of teaching and technology and physical space all coming together around the course design? I think it would look very, very different. Well, apparently I finished within time. Hold something up for me.